Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the hearing of the Joint Committee on Veterans and Federal Affairs. You folks have a cell phone, if you wouldn't mind putting on the library, we appreciate that. Today, the committee is going to hear testimony relative to H3547 and also receive a presentation from the Massachusetts Veterans Long-Term Care and Housing Master Plan Commission. As is tradition, we always start our hearings with the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If anybody would like to testify and you haven't signed up already, with the computer out front there that you can sign in and testify. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge our fellow committee members, Ryan, Arciero, Cost, Vice Chair Sylvia, and Bayless. Thank you all for being. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pleasure to be here today and hear some legislation and then get a phenomenal presentation. We'll get a little bit more into the history of that after the hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. First, we're going to hear testimony on H3547, and first up is the sponsor, Arciero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking me out of order. Appreciate it. Chairman Rush, Chairman Paracello, members of the committee, testifying in support of House Bill 3547. It's an act relative to exempting disabled veteran income for housing, a bill on which I filed. My legislation seeks to grant a guaranteed benefit to our disabled veterans that a portion of their service-connected income would be exempted from consideration when determining their gross income for public housing. Specifically, the bill would exempt any disabled income amount over $1,800 from the calculation used to determine the disabled veteran financial eligibility for state-aided housing. As you know, local housing authorities currently can exempt this amount, but it's discretionary. Under the current housing regulations, and most specifically CMR 760, used to determine income, the $1,800 threshold was established by law also in 1969. My goal is to mandate that the income above this threshold be exempted for our disabled veterans for state housing purposes, and establish this as a guaranteed benefit to them, not leaving it to the housing authorities to determine through discretionary matters. I was originally prompted to file this bill after being contacted by my VSO in Westford, Terry Stater, who said he had several disabled veterans over this last couple of years who would not qualify for state-aided housing because their income was considered too high. With the unfortunate result of there being no eligible disabled veterans in the town of Westford who qualify under the current formula being used, for example, in Westford, a single veteran with 100% disability rating would receive compensation in the amount of approximately $35,000 a year. The income level for Westford public housing is $31,000 annually. This number is based on the federal HUD numbers for the Greater Local Area for Section 8 calculations when they come up with that figure. Currently, income thresholds vary from housing program to housing program, based on different regional HUD figures for different parts of Massachusetts throughout the Commonwealth, with housing authorities having discretion as to whether or not they will be exempt above the $1,800 threshold. I'm sure you all agree, our disabled veterans have given far more to our nation than we could ever hope to compensate them for. I believe we need to lower the income threshold for these most worthy Americans, and I'm hoping that this bill will start the important conversation. It's simply unacceptable that service-connected disabled veterans should not have access to our public housing based on the income limit. Mr. Chairman, Chairman Rush, Chairman Paracello, I ask that the Veterans Affairs Committee give all due consideration to reforming the current law and regulations in order that disabled veterans are not excluded from housing based on a formula that overemphasizes their gross income. I think we can all agree that this special group of Americans have already paid more than we can ever possibly give back to them. I look forward to working with you on this important issue and hope that we can assist this most worthy group of Americans. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Questions or comments from the committee? Joined by Rep. Hamilton, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And again, I kind of anecdotally said in my testimony that over this last year, my VSO had contacted me about this, that the HUD calculations had the income for a 100% disabled veteran having access to the housing authority, the income level would be about $35,000, well, actually 31,000, excuse me, and three of the veterans, disabled veterans that were trying to gain access, their average salary came about to, or their compensation from the VA salary came about to $35,000. So this $1,800 figure has been in law since 1969, and housing authorities have this discretion, but very often, in some cases, like in Westford, did not use it. They decided that they would not exempt anything beyond $1,800. So I asked for the committee to look into this. I will continue to work with both the chairman and the committee to find a resolution to this matter.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Anybody? Joey Cumming. Who's going?
With your permission, may we
Sure.
have the three organizations speak at the same time?
To,
Oh, no, come on.
the road between two thorns.
I'll just start briefly by saying the three of our organizations obviously are in support of this bill and in support of any bill, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Sorry for not expressing that. I can't say it any better than what was already said, so I don't need to reiterate it, but the VFW and won't speak to the gentleman, but are very much in support of the bill.
With the Marine Corps League, Warren Griffin from the Marine Corps League, we'd just like to speak on the record of my work this bill. And just listening to the history, again, I believe many of our public housing facilities originally were built for the returning veterans of World War II, which was very nice for the World War II veterans. And I find it interesting that 1969, they decided to have these limitations placed on, again, welcoming home the Vietnam veterans. Here's the Vietnam guys, let's see how we can exclude them. So again, when I first started with this committee, my intention was to help support, especially the Iraq, Afghanistan veterans coming home now, and to go against the mistreatment that the Vietnam veterans received. 1969, if everybody knows the history of Vietnam, 68, 69 was the Big Tet money battle. So those returning veterans, unfortunately in 69, decided to find a way to exclude them from public housing, which wasn't right then. Thank you.
Dan Stack with the Disabled American Veterans, and we would like to thank the representative for sponsoring this bill, and we are definitely in favor of it. One of the things that has always been ironic to us is that we have a veteran who comes back after serving, and many times because of the income they're getting from their service-connected disabilities, which they receive because of their service-based nature, they do not qualify for housing in our state. I think the $1,800, anything over that, but we're fully in support of taking that off. And as we all know in law, there's two words, shall and may. So let's take away the may part and make it a shall, that they will exclude the over $1,800 from the calculation. So many of our deserving veterans will be able to get housing in this state. And we thank you for hearing us today.
I don't know if anybody has an answer in the audience, but you know like how many housing authorities do with that exclusion, how many don't? Just gonna throw it out there if anybody knows.
I'd like to respond to that, Mr. Chairman, if I could. I know because we've had this issue pop up before. All housing authorities are doing whatever they want to do. So this is a perfect example, and you, sir, what you said is exactly true. The entire purpose to set up public housing after World War II was to benefit men and women who were returning home. And somehow we've lost our way. And we suddenly forget our veterans. You know, how many of our veterans right now have not been able to get access to public housing because they even have 50% disability and receiving a pension somewhere else, or Social Security pension, and they exceed the HUD guidelines. That's ridiculous. They should be excluded. So I think this is an incredibly perfect piece of perfect bill. We have to protect our veterans somehow. We're going to lose the whole purpose of what that public housing was for. Sorry, I hate to pontificate, but when we see something like this come up, it hits us right in the face. And if every housing authority can do whatever they want to do, then we'll be battling this individually, each municipality, each town, month upon month.
Thanks, appreciate that.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much. We have Uncle John's and this one. Uncle Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We at the MVSOA also fully agree with the representative, with the speakers who have gone before us. We do see this time and time again. This is probably not intentional, but we do see that these rules are applied unequally, not the same in every community, and I think it would be of benefit to our veterans to not penalize them because they're disabled and use that income. We're also, we're seeing the same thing. This isn't part of this bill, but maybe it's something we need to address in future legislation. We see a similar sort of thing with Chapter 115, repayment for prescriptions, healthcare, those sort of things for folks that are at the poverty level, and that being used against them as income for housing.
And I think anything we can do to standardize the benefits so a veteran and his family around the Commonwealth can understand what they're going to receive before they walk in. And it isn't, as you mentioned so well, Mr. Vice Chairman, that the people, the seeming impression that people are just doing what they want. And I think, if I could, I want to thank, on behalf of the MVSOA, thank Representative Ricero for filing this important legislation. And I think to echo a little bit of what was said by Warren Griffin, I think we really cannot at this stage forget, at this point in our history, we've done a very good job of separating the war from the warrior, at least publicly. And I think one of the things we can't do is forget the veterans who had to suffer to teach us that lesson as a nation. I think Vietnam veterans, having gone through what they went through, coming home, this is the population who was applying for, in many cases, for senior housing in their communities, who've done nothing but apply for a disability, which in layman's terms means the service broke your body or your soul. And I think that for us, as a Commonwealth, to stand behind that, I think it's the right place to be.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments?
One closing comment, we'd like to wish Representative John Vilas a happy birthday today.
Thank you very much. 25 years old.
Don't be there between.
Anybody else? Testify?
And we've been joined by Senator Mike Brady is with us. Senator.
Welcome. Great, if there's no further questions or comments regarding this bill, next we're going to move on to hear from the folks who are helping us out on the Massachusetts Long-Term Care and Housing Master Plan Committee. This commission was established through the Valor Act, and Senator Rush and myself are co-chairs. We have a number of great folks serving on the commission, so we've been holding hearings throughout the past year. Site visits at a number of places, including the soldiers' homes. A couple of folks folks just came to my district in Beverly last week to check out a Pleasant Street Apartments, which provides housing for former currently homeless veterans. So we're trying to get a handle on the veterans housing, long-term care issues that are facing the Commonwealth. And these good folks from UMass are going to give us a presentation on what we're doing so far.
Just to echo what the co-chair said, you know, many years ago, so many folks that I look out here in this veterans community have been advocating for a long-term roadmap in terms of veteran housing and long-term care. I think my first day in the State House many years ago, Warren Griffin and John McGilvery came to see me on this very issue, and we were able to get legislation in the Valor Act, as Chairman Paracella said, co-sponsored by all these members here, and with the idea of forming a commission. We have been so fortunate because our friends and partners at UMass Medical have joined us and have done tremendous work for the last 9 months. And we could not be more thankful to them as we move forward in this process with the hope, as it works out ideally, a commission is formed, data is gathered, and then from that a very good product is put forth. And that has been because of all the advocates and the legislators sitting here before you. So that being said and done, we would like to invite the team from UMass to come forward, and they will present to the committee. Looking forward, so folks in the audience will be able to watch the slides as well, up ahead in the back of the room, both sides. And I'd like to take the opportunity for that, so you folks in the audience here at the hearing have the opportunity to know who this outstanding team is, so, and members of the committee as well. So please welcome, thank you, and please introduce yourselves and give some background.
Thank you. I'm Dean Briggs, and I'm from Commonwealth Medicine, which is the consulting and research arm of the medical school. And I'm in the Office of Program Development, and we support initiatives of this sort for state agencies, federal agencies, and other folks.
I'm Janet Hale from the Graduate School of Nursing. I'm Associate Dean there for Interprofessional and Community Partnerships. I'm also a veteran military daughter, and for 28 years a military wife.
I'm Joanne Kelp, also from Commonwealth Medicine and the Office of Program Development.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you all for being present. As you can tell by the end, this is near and dear to my heart, so it's been an extreme honor for Commonwealth Medicine to have reached out and invited me to participate with them on this journey. So our job is to project the needs and services for Mass veterans across the spectrum of age, need, preference, and options. This gives you the kind of the roadmap of what we were doing. The credits go to my colleague to my left who designed this, but essentially you'll see up on the right we are doing a significant amount of research through the veterans and other studies that are ongoing. And weekly, new research is coming out to give us the evidence to support the future needs of our veterans. We also have scheduled several listening tours, 7 across the state to be exact. We've held 2, and we postponed the others due to poor attendance at the first 2. We've also visited about 8 other state homes. We've called many other homes. We visited a federal home, which we'll talk a little bit about during the report. So I think we all know that this is what our job is, and that we want to not only add years to the life of our veterans, but we want to add life to their years. Recently, Secretary Roderick Donald visited UMass Medical School. During the course of his presentation, and I didn't pay him, he said, and I put the quote up there, that a train wreck is coming with the aging of America. So a lot of what we're doing is we're looking at what's happening to the civilian population, and then we're marrying it up with what we know about veterans that makes them unique and different. So essentially, we know that the numbers of the aged is increasing. It'll be doubled by 2040. At the time of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology report by Glassmeyer et al., they anticipated that we'd have 200,000 veterans in 2040 in the state of Massachusetts. That was based on 2009 data. Since then, more have deployed, and I don't believe that, unfortunately, maybe the wars and the conflicts are not over. So we should assume that that number may be actually higher. We know that veterans age faster than their non-veteran counterparts. We know that dementia is increasing not only in the civilian population, but our veterans who have had TBIs are experiencing their greater risk and earlier onset for dementia. And patients with dementia are more likely to require institutional care because their needs exceed what can be offered by caregivers and offered by the communities. So what we wanted to do is to try to figure out what would be the best for our veterans. So you see the puzzle pieces. We'll talk about these later, but it just shows you what the options are that we've been looking into, in addition to their unique health needs, whether it's home-based care, skilled nursing facilities, residential settings, and other services and supports. And if there's time, we'll discuss these at the end. There's many options, and the bullet point would be that we think that we're going to need all of these options for our veterans. Because some are going to want to stay home, some are going to want to stay in their communities, but others are not going to be able to because of their care needs. And I think we need to keep in mind that many of our homeless veterans, those in supportive housing, don't have friends and family in many cases, nor do they have a home other than the one that they're in, nor do they really have a community other than the one that they have, which we are providing for them. So this just shows you quickly and briefly an overview of the ages of our veterans by age group. We also know that as our population decreases from the current around 400,000 to 200,000 in 2040, we know that the female veterans are going to increase and become a much greater percentage. And this was before they opened up the combat arms to women. So the latest thing that I read, they anticipate that the percentage will be even higher. And we know that women veterans have unique needs. And so we have to prepare for that. The research that I've already done may be supplanted by a January 18th special issue of the Gerontologist that has 13 new articles on women veterans and their needs as they age and require long-term care. So stay tuned for that, there'll be more. In our Massachusetts veterans, these are the numbers. Right now we have 12,000 who have greater than 69% of service-connected disabilities. These folks generally are fairly well supported by the Veterans Administration. But you can see that there are a large number, roughly 39,000, who have less than 69% service-connected disabilities. So this includes the visible and the invisible. So we thought that this was sort of an interesting slide, that out of our 400,000, only 65,000 receive financial support and compensation. And we only have 137 out of the 400,000 who have enrolled in the Veterans Health Care System. This shows you how much the VA has spent in Massachusetts in thousands. And I think it's interesting to see how little has been spent on construction. And I think that while it's still available, the 65% matching is something that we should take into consideration. I'm not clairvoyant, but my fear is that money is going to be decreasing. There's already now a wait list of states who have submitted and been approved, but they're waiting subsequent years to begin and to receive that money. We have 125,000 veterans who are Vietnam era. They use aid and attendance and home care at twice the rate of our World War II veterans. When we visited the Ohio State Veterans Home, they're now finding 63-year-old Vietnam veterans needing nursing home and skilled nursing care. And I wanted to reiterate that the domiciliaries in some of these sites are really a permanent home to many of these veterans. They do well in a protected environment with supports they find that many of them, when they go out and are faced with having to pay bills and to keep up with the day-to-day things that the rest of us, can do fairly easily, that because of their injuries from PTSD, TBIs, that they get overwhelmed and they're unable to do it. So they come back to the supportive housing. But they function quite well when they're in supportive housing. It's fairly recently now, we've come up with 18 diseases linked to Agent Orange and the herbicides with dioxin from Korea, but mostly Vietnam. You can read the diseases, they're all quite significant, and the effect of it on their children from the Vietnam War with birth defects, including spina bifida. Prostate cancer, if you think about all the people that you know who have prostate cancer, who are veterans, who may never have registered within the system, imagine if everyone who has these diseases that is a veteran wanted to sign up and wanted to seek, possible compensation. We would completely overwhelm the VA system out here. And recently, in the spring, there was a new article that came out that now shows that Agent Orange Plus post-traumatic stress disorder increases the risk of dementia. Many of you may know this, but anybody who served 90 days or more of continuous military service and receives a diagnosis of ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or Lou Gehrig's disease, it is automatically considered related to their military service. And they do get huge benefits if they are aware of this availability. Their homes can be renovated, they get state-of-the-art wheelchairs and computers so that they can try to live their lives as normally as possible, for as long as possible. And they do not believe that it is related to Agent Orange. So even if you never deployed, you never went to combat, if you spent 90 days or more service when you get ALS, it's considered a presumptive disease. Right now, 12%, this was as of 2009 data, 12% of mass veterans are Gulf War veterans. And if you think that it's taken 50 years to link those 18 diseases with our Korean and Vietnam veterans, I assume that you share with me the fears of what we may find linked to the veterans who have served in the current wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. So we know that between 15 and 20% of all male veterans have TBI. From the earlier slides, you know that increases their risk in an earlier onset, possibly for dementia, PTSD. PTSD is what's causing many of our Vietnam veterans to be unable to live on their own. And then you have the environmental exposures. I can tell you it takes quite a while for them to catch up with notifying you of your environmental exposures. I was back 10 years from the first Gulf War when I got the final letter that indicated to me that on March 15 that I was located at such and such a site and therefore had been exposed. I was thrilled, I guess, that they, caught up with me, but at the same time, it's kind of that thing that you dread ever receiving in your mail. And just recently now, they are doing new research because of the thought that the chemical nerve agents and the occurrence of brain cancer now from the Gulf Wars. 30% of the veterans deployed to Iraq will require long-term placements in 20 to 30 years. That's an amazing statement. I had to look it up on my own. I was verbally told this by somebody from the Army War College currently there, but it actually is published by the Department of Health and Human Services. So if you look at our slide of 45,000 veterans, and using this as a percentage, we can anticipate approximately 13,500 of our veterans needing long-term care placement. So we have two wonderful state veterans homes that I've had the pleasure, the team has had the pleasure to visit on several occasions, and every time we are absolutely blown over by the quality of the care and the compassion and the caring that they receive from the high-quality personnel working there. We all know that the facilities are less than stellar in terms of being kept up and constructed according to code. So we don't have a lot of time to spend on that. I can tell you they both have wait lists. Chelsea has 163, I believe, on their wait list. And Holyoke, while they have 123 applications in process, 60 people are actively waiting to be admitted. So we've identified in our visits to other state homes and to that adult day healthcare needs We feel that if we had adult day healthcare needs on the sites of some of our state homes, that a lot of people could be cared for longer in the community if they had a place to go each day where they had some medical care provided, they were assessed, and it got them out of their homes. And we also have found that assisted living housing would be ideal as well to keep people from the more expensive long-term care skilled nursing facilities. We could keep them out longer if we offered some kind of supportive housing again for them. And then this is a slide that just the MIT report by Glassmeyer that was done in 2013 for this committee, I think. They were the ones that supported the need for the continued use of state homes. It was just whether we was it, we needed more, they needed downsized, they needed their locations changed. And these are some of the things that we've been trying to look into. Just as a piece of information, Massachusetts charges $30 a day for the folks that are in the soldiers' homes, which is a wonderful deal for them and for their families. And it's very much appreciated by the families as we've learned from meeting with them. However, that is very different from every other state, which basically has been means tested. And some of the states do not want to impoverish the veterans, so they may only tax or take a portion of their income and leave the properties and other things alone. But you can see from this that there's a lot of different ways that the state homes have managed it. The only other state that has a set fee is Texas, and that's $56 a day, but they have a new concept home in Tyler, and that one is means tested. So these are the options for long-term care services and support. So we have home-based care, which is pretty clearly there with friends or family. I can tell you that that about 3 years ago, for every person who was aging, there were 7 possible caregivers for them. In the next coming years, it's only the number of possible caregivers will be decreasing to 3. People have fewer children, their spouses are dying off, people are divorced at the time. So in terms of the skilled nursing facilities, I'll talk a little more about them later. I talked already about the assisted living facilities, the adult family homes, medical foster homes, there are options as well that the VA sometimes supports. And then our other important areas that we want to consider are the adult daycare, but also the specialty units that we're going to be needing for women, as well as the dementia. Both Chelsea and Holyoke commented to us that the numbers of patients with dementia who need to be in secure environments is increasing, and the ages of those that are being admitted are younger. So this is a slide of the home base, and basically, a lot of people can get a lot of care at home. Some of the communities do really, really well at providing services and keeping the elder engaged. Others in rural communities have very few support structures. And that there's actually been some writing about that the elders are imprisoned by the independence of being able to live alone at home. So for residentials, again, I think the assisted living is something that we can look into right now. We know that the VA really doesn't subsidize that, although from our meeting in Beverly the other day, we were talking to a woman who's very savvy in terms of financing, and she was helping us to understand that you could build an assisted living, and you can call it an assisted living light, that the issue is you can care for people for quite a while, bring in folks to care for them and provide the services, but the expense becomes, once it becomes medicalized, where you actually have professional licensed caregivers in the facility. So that's something we can consider. The skilled nursing facilities, the VA, the veterans, are now very progressive. Their building was called the greenhouse small house concept for their new construction. I'll talk about that shortly. And then the adult day health is an area that can be somewhat income generating, provide excellent services, again, as I said before, for the veterans. And then the other respite, palliative, and hospice care, again, as your needs. So I'm going to end real quickly discussing the greenhouse small house model. This is a new philosophy that is the way of disability communities, as well as a couple of the state homes that we visited, and also the VA has them in about 5 different states. And they're small, the individuals have their own private room, they decorate them, they bring their own furniture in, they have a community kitchen, they smell the food cooking, they can help and participate with that, they do help with chores if they're able and want to, they can go in and out at will. And this just shows you what the insides, they're all pretty much designed the same, they have the hearth, they have the fireplace, and the medical equipment is not visible, so that when they are there and their guests come, it doesn't look like a nursing home. We know that the land that we have for our skilled homes is limited. There's an excellent example in the civilian community in Chelsea. It's the Leonard Florence Center for Living. My colleagues and I visited there. We're hoping to have the next commission meeting there so that everyone can see this. It's a pretty amazing setup. And it's called the stacked greenhouse because of the limited property. You can see to the left, those pictures are actually the blueprints for the New Hampshire state home that they are hoping to get a 35% match for the funding to build it. And the Rhode Island is actually in the process of constructing a home that looks similar to that. It's the same, it's the small house concept.
All right, great, thank you so very much. That's a wonderful presentation. We appreciate all the work that you've been doing. We'll, just so the public knows, we'll be having further hearings with the commission, and you mentioned another road trip, and also hearings here at the State House with the public can provide input if they'd like. And we're hoping to come up with recommendations and legislation in the next several weeks. Hopefully have something ready to roll on Memorial Day. So tremendous appreciation for all the work that you've done so far, and will continue to do. Any questions or comments from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question. I received, I'm sure other Marines who spent time at Camp Lejeune received a letter from the VA regarding all the water I drank there. I didn't hear anything about, did you do anything with the water issue at Camp Lejeune?
I have, it's in the written report.
Okay.
Yes, there's 8 diseases associated with that now, along with birth defects of children. It's a very significant.
It's a serious issue. I just wonder how many vets in Massachusetts, what the effects have been, and it's been a while. I mean, I was there in 70 and 71. I know others were there years before were affected by it.
Right, 1957.
We don't,
To 1985.
I just wondered what you.
Right, and that's one of the things that I hope to find out is actually how many of our citizens lived there during that period of time. It's not easy information so far to access.
And they're also not eager to pass that information out. VA is not eager to get information out. I'm saddened by that. So.
No, you're right. I've learned a lot by seeking as opposed to things being pushed out.
Sometimes you wonder who are you fighting here? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, no, that's a huge issue. I've heard our constituents are well served on that issue. Ryan?
You had mentioned aid and attendance, and I don't even know if the question here is relevant, but before I got elected, I worked for Congressman Capuano, and I did veterans casework for him. And we were at all the congressional offices in Massachusetts. We had an awful time with aid and attendance. A lot of it was when they created the program, I think they weren't expecting so many veterans to use it, but it was also a pension component, and it was just a real mess of paperwork trying to get that to families. Do you know, it's been 2 years for me since I worked in that office, so do you know if they've been able to straighten some of that out?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. Just last night I was reading my VFW magazine, and there's an article in there about aid and attendance and the fact that it's a hidden benefit that many people don't know about. It didn't have the resources for you to try to gain that. There's some pretty severe income restrictions associated with it, but if you are able to get it, you actually can use money towards assisted living.
Yes, and actually, that's a lot of the cases. I think it was originally designed for people who were taking care of veterans at home, and then there was some questions when they allowed it to be used in assisted living. That was a lot, and it's good, I'm glad you mentioned that. That was a lot of the cases we ran into where the assisted living facilities weren't exactly sure how to apply for. We had made some inroads.
I'll copy the article and send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be great, thank you very much.
Anybody else?
Yeah, it's important to know too that, you know, any kind of like veteran housing that qualifies does get a 65% reimbursement from the VA, so, it's an incredible benefit that we can try to take advantage of, and hopefully we'll be able to do that. Well, thank you so very much, we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We have to shuffle up to another National Guard, so we're going to close the hearing.